Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast. I am your host, Dividend Dave. Please be sure to join the Passive Income Posse by clicking that subscribe button below. I am super excited for this episode's guest. You know him on Twitter, well over 123,000 followers on Twitter, decade investor. I'm going to throw it over to you to give yourself an introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for having me on here. Appreciate it. I love dividends and I love Dave. So put it together, we love Dividend Dave. But yes,
Awesome.
my name is Colin. I go by Decade Investor on socials and created my page about 2.5 years ago. And I'm 24 years old. So I wanted to get young people excited about investing because we all know, as we'll probably talk about today, the
Yep.
power of compound interest, how powerful it is. And the more time you give it, the more powerful it becomes. And so I was like, how do I get people younger into this game of investing and show them that, hey, this compound interest thing is very, very powerful at all times. It's the eighth wonder of the world, as Albert Einstein says. But if you start young, it can become really, really powerful. And so created my page about 2.5 years ago in 2020, mid 2020, and just sharing what I like to say the good word of investing to all that want to hear it. So thank you again for having me on and really excited for our conversation.
Yeah, awesome. We will get into some of your socials too. I see you have a YouTube channel, and obviously, like I said, well over 123,000 followers on Twitter, one of the biggest accounts in the dividend Twitter community. And then I noticed you have a link tree too, so lots of things going on there. Before we get into it, I do have to give a shout out to I have partnered with buying buyinvestingshirts.com. So yeah, as you can see, we have the Passive Income Posse t-shirt there, and we do have the dividends. And when you go to their website, you will find tons of other great uh, designs as well. There will be a link in the description below. Use the code word posse for I think it's 5, maybe 10% off. You tell me. Tell me in the comments how much you saved. Okay, let's get into it. Colin, I guess first off, like you said, you're young, 24, you know that you've got time on your side. You know, in another 24 years, you're still going to be younger than what I am right now. And y- you're just getting to that point where, hey, I'm getting that ball rolling, getting that snowball. That snowball, the snowball is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden you have a giant, abominable snowman, right? So I guess first, sort of what got you into investing to start? What was some of the first stocks or companies that you picked? Whether it was like, again, we're just gonna. Colin is in the U.S. I'm obviously people know I'm in Canada. There'll be some back and forth there, but so I'm guessing I don't know, maybe something like Coca Cola or Pepsi or Walmart or Johnson and Johnson. Like the list goes on and on with the American companies. So I guess just what first got you into it, and I am curious, what was the first company that you bought? That you invested in?
Yeah, so I am 24 years old, like I said, but I started investing at 17. And so when I had to go the whole custodial route with my parents to give me an account. But I got into investing mainly because when I was in high school and in my teens, I had a mowing company, just a real small, me and my brother, me and a friend, we would just mow lawns. And so I had some cash. And at the time, I did not like the bank. I was not a fan of the bank, but not because banks, your savings accounts, well, now they pay pretty decent, but it wasn't because of the savings accounts or anything like that. I just didn't like banks because when I was in my teens, if I didn't see my physical cash, then I thought I had no money. So I was like, I got to see my physical cash. I don't like banks. But then, in my mid teens, I started to think, and I'm like, as maybe some kids do, they're like, how do I become rich? How do I have a lot of money? So I got on Google, did some quick searches, read about a lot of things, and I see this thing called the stock market investing, and I'm like, okay, this seems kind of cool. Let me check it out. And at 17, I opened up my first account with $400. And I wish I could have a crazy story where, like, I bought Apple or I bought Coca-Cola or some stock that's good. I bought four companies with $100 each, and I started investing on E-Trade, where at the time you had to pay like $4 or $7 per trade commission. So my $100, like when I got into it, was only worth like 95 or 93, whatever. So I was already losing money commissions. But I honestly, one was like some small retail store company. One was this penny stock that was like aeronautical. long story short, I had no idea what I was buying. I just
Yeah.
bought it because like I saw an article about it, or I was like, one was an insurance company too. So I was just like, didn't know what I was doing. I just bought, 4 different companies. And I quickly learned that, one of those important things about investing is knowing what you're investing into. And over the course of about a year and a half, 3 of those stocks did not do well. One did well. So I ended up like net losing money, but I learned a lot. I think I
Yeah.
gained a lot of knowledge of like investing, and I'm happy it happened with $400, not like 4,000 or even more than that.
Right.
And so quickly like had to figure out, how do I relearn my, like, what strategy do I do? How do I make money with investing? Like I had to basically go back to the drawing board and figure out a new strategy. Learn about ETFs. Learned about how the ETF. I love ETFs. So I was like, this is great. Like this is kind of cool. It's low risk, but I'm able to diversify my money across so many different holdings. And so got into doing ETFs, and then have slowly kind of added different types of things like individual dividend stocks, etc. But the progression was investing in things I didn't know, moving into investing in things that I do know. And that's really paid off for me in terms of my investing career, to where I am today at 24, almost 25 here in about a month.
Nice. So basically, at a very young age, you've already learned the lessons that so many of us took so long to learn because we've all been there. We've all done it. Don't feel bad about making those mistakes. We've all invested in those penny stocks going, hey, I'm buying 100 shares of this stock at $1. It's going to shoot up to $10 or $100 and I'm going to like kill it. Right.
Yep.
And that those stories are so few and far between when it actually happens. Yeah, so but definitely awesome for you that you've learned from those mistakes at a very young age. You
Yeah.
did mention ETFs as well. ETFs are obviously a great way to get into a lot of companies, able to diversify. I've had, you know, for those of you who have been watching and listening to my podcast, we're well over 40 guests now in just over 4 months, and roughly split 50-50 Americans with a couple Europeans, and every single American, save one, the last guest I had did not hold SCHD, and but
Hmm.
it was actually at the very top of his watch list. So I am guessing you hold a SCHD and probably love it.
Yeah, actually, so I just started buying SCHD about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, in November, December timeframe, and I would have bought it way earlier, but I made a public goal to get $100,000 invested into VOO. So
Right.
that took up my capital. Anytime I had money, I was like, I gotta hit this goal, getting into VOO. So I would have bought SCHD earlier, but I kind of pigeonhole myself with the goal, which is okay. I mean, I'm not complaining. I got my goal. So I've been adding to SCHD, every single week, and plan to add to it every single week until they either stop allowing me to buy or they shut down SCHD. That's kind of my investing strategy.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, so most of my listeners and viewers know that I don't hold any US stocks right now. My entire portfolio is in the Canadian market, but I have been looking at US stocks, and I put out a few different tweets saying, which one should I buy? And what came back basically was SEHD, Coca-Cola, and there was a third one in there. Oh, somebody in the comments remind me what that third one was. But basically after and then I put out a poll of those 3, and yeah, SCHD was far and away the runaway winner of saying, like, well, if you invest in SCHD, you still have those other 2 companies in it in that portfolio anyways. They're in that basket of companies. So
Yeah.
eventually I will get there to investing in some US stocks. My major thing right now is obviously the exchange rate and then dealing with taxes as well. So
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm
something.
not the tax guy. There's other people out there that know way more about the taxes and tax implications back and forth for Canadians investing in the US and Americans investing in Canada, but eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, that's something that I've learned a lot about when I'm talking to people in different countries. Like investing in the U.S. stock market has a lot of implications that us U.S. investors don't even think about because we're just like, we're here in the U.S., right? And
Yeah,
like, we have brokerages that are U.S. only. That's like, I love, like, for me, I love M1 Finance, but M1 Finance is U.S. only, right? And so there's definitely certain limitations, sadly. Like if you're not in the U.S., that if you want to invest in the U.S., it makes it extra, a little bit more difficult
Yeah.
than someone living in the U.S.
There are some I know there are some treaties back and forth. I don't know if treaty is the right word between Canada and the US that does make investing a little bit easier between our 2 countries because obviously we're right here, we're beside each other, as
Yep.
opposed to maybe some other, say, European or Asian countries that might have a more difficult time investing in some of those, US very attractive US companies that, obviously I've mentioned a few of them before, the Cokes, the Pepsis, the Johnson& and Johnson, Procter& and Gamble, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on, right?
Right. Yeah. Is it what is it? Is VFV the S&P 500 equivalent? Is it VFV in Canada?
I No, it might be, honestly,
Okay.
I'm not into that one. So,
Okay.
yeah, like so we have the TSX, which is the Toronto Stock Exchange, and, yeah, there are obviously different, ETFs that cover that. And now that you mention that, hey, newcomer investor, if you're watching this, comment below, is he right, VFE?
Yeah, I have not a shameless plug, but I'm building a dividend tracker, and we're building for like European and Canadian users and Asian users, just all
Globally.
yeah, global. And we're seeing that as like different exchanges and having to so I'm starting to like for testing purposes, I'm starting to learn about non-US markets because I'm
Right.
just so used to Apple, just go buy AAPL and you're good, but it's not as easy if you're in a different country.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So let's kind of break down some of the different sectors, what you like, don't like. One of the places I like to start, my viewers and listeners know REITs is one of my favorites. The majority, well, I think every REIT I own in Canada pays a monthly dividend. I really like the monthly dividend. Now I get it. I mean, I know 5% is 5%, whether it's paid monthly or quarterly, but you just like seeing that show up on the say the
Right.
15th or 16th of every month. It's like, hey, there's another however many dollars. So I guess what are your thoughts on REITs? Do you hold any? Is there any that you like? Um, Realty Income, I know is probably the most popular US REIT, and I'm guessing you probably maybe hold some of that as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
just go ahead and talk about REITs a little bit.
Yeah, so I have two REITs in my portfolio. O, like you just mentioned, I have O Realty Income, and then I also have Stag, which is Stag Industrials. It's also a monthly dividend payer. O, everyone talks about O. It's literally on their website. It's called the monthly dividend paying company. So we all know that O pays monthly. Stag
Yeah,
is one that I do like as well. Stag is more in the industrial space, so they're like big warehouses. Amazon's one of their biggest tenants. FedEx is a tenant, and many other big name companies that we all know are their tenants.
yeah,
And so as things, in my opinion, move to and have already moving more online, e-commerce, more warehouse or distribution centers, etc. That is kind of the space that Stag plays into. Well, and they are in the industrial space, and so I think it's a good company, but also it pays a monthly dividend. And like you mentioned, 5% is 5% a year. It's no different if you get paid annually or monthly. But hey, it feels good to see it every single month sometimes.
exactly. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so those are the two REITs that I own, O and Stag. And then yeah, O, I'm sure everyone knows O. Um, the O is the premier of dividend investing monthly payers REITs. And so I have O in my portfolio as well. But Stag is one that I do like. And not many people talk about it. I haven't seen it as much as O, but I'm a fan. Have been holding Stag for I want to say at this point almost 3 years now. In this portfolio that I started at the beginning of 2020. So yeah, I'm a fan of O and Stag as my REITs.
Nice. Now that we've talked about REITs, I recall that Realty Income was the third US company that I had in that in my Twitter poll
There you
about
go.
what should I buy, um, Coca-Cola, SCHD, or Realty Income. Took
Yeah.
me a while to think about to figure that out. But once we started talking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was the third one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like that is pinnacle, I feel like, of dividend investors, of not pinnacle, but like a lot of people like O.
Right.
And it's in
There's a lot
a
to like there.
Yeah, and it's in a an industry or a sector that is hard to see it ever go away. I mean, it's in real estate, it's in renting to not seven Dollar General, CVS, Walgreens, like these big companies
Yeah.
that they're basically saying, like you're saying, all these namestays like Walgreens, Dollar General, etc., have to fail for realty income to fail. And if these companies are doing well, realty income is doing well because they're paying their rent to realty income. So you're almost getting, like, through realty income, you're almost investing in the
Yep.
success of who their tenants are.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so one of my favorites here in Canada is called RioCan, and I've mentioned this so many times. Just 45 minutes down the road that way
There
is
you go.
uh is a RioCan center, and one of their anchor stores is a Home Depot. I don't own any Home Depot, but because I own RioCan, I feel like that Home Depot obviously is helping me because it's part of that REIT. So I get your point 110%, right? 110%.
Yeah,
And
Home Depot is another stock I like as well. I'm a fan of Home Depot, and Lowe's. If we're gonna throw out some, this is the one thing I like about, like, investing, is, as a retail investor in the stock market, because I always get that question: Coca-Cola or Pepsi, Home Depot or Lowe's,
own
and
them both.
you know, yeah,
Own all
exactly.
four.
You can, yeah, exactly. That's what I love about investing is there's no limitations on, oh, if you buy Coca-Cola, you can't buy Pepsi. There's no, like, non-competes as an investor. It's like, if I like both, or I'm not really sure, or I think the whole industry is going to grow, but I like Coke and Pepsi, or Home Depot, Lowe's, or whatever, two that are like maybe kind of duopolies in a sense. You can own both, and that's the beautiful thing about investing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that answer. That's great. And then just going back to Stag for briefly before we move on, you mentioned Amazon and FedEx. That's that's amazing. And then you also mentioned like other big name companies. So I'm looking at the I'm gonna look more into that one as well because yeah, those are heavy hitters. Obviously, Amazon, one of the biggest players in the world right now. FedEx, you know, we depend on FedEx, UPS, Purelator. We depend on them to deliver our packages every day. And when I say dependent, I mean like at work. We depend on, hey, I need this overnighted, and I need it to leave, say
Yep.
Missouri, and be in Ontario tomorrow morning, right? Like, and
Right.
somehow they make it happen. So great companies. So I'm sure they are great tenants for those warehouses.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at their top 10 tenants as of 2021, mid 2021, so about a year and a half ago, but it's probably pretty similar. FedEx, so number one is Amazon by far at 4%. But then you have XPO Logistics, Eastern Metal Supply, Trimos Corporation, FedEx, American Tire Distributors, Penguin Random House, and a few other names. So,
Right.
some, again, it's the same thing with O. It's like, if you're investing in Stag, you're also investing in the success of FedEx. You're investing in the success of Amazon, because if they do well, they keep paying the bills in their rent to
Yep.
Stag, which in turn pays you as the investor. And so that's the cool thing about REITs is you're investing in the success of that REIT, but also in the success of who their tenants are, because
Exactly.
if their tenants pay, you make the money too.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I've looked at that from that perspective because, like I said, from off the top of this segment, I own quite a few different REITs, and yeah, so I've looked at that going, hey, you know what? I'm actually quite diversified throughout my REITs, whether it's like the retail sector, the healthcare sector. I have one that owns healthcare properties, like they own the physical doctors' offices and clinics and retirement homes and healthcare properties, right?
Yep.
And so I get 110% what you're saying.
What's the
I
is that American company? Sorry to interrupt you. Is that American company that does the healthcare, or is
No,
that
it's called
Canadian?
NWH, is Northwest Healthcare. It's a Canadian
Okay,
company.
got it.
Um, and then actually another REIT is called EXE, but they're more primarily into the retirement home and long care term facilities, but similar
That's
idea, healthcare.
Well, yeah, I mean, healthcare is always going to be there. I mean, it's people are always going to we're always going to age. That's one thing that does not go down. We did not, our age
Yeah,
does not go down. And that's, you, and then not to take over. Maybe this is your question you're thinking of, or something we have to talk about in the future and in the later on in this. But the intersection between healthcare and technology is going to be, in my opinion, an ever growing space.
Right.
as technology gets better. Which it already healthcare has already gotten better because of technology, but technology is always getting better. And healthcare is always going to be there, and people are going to always try to find ways to have the new best this, have the best this, have the quickest whatever. So that's when you do, that's not really REITs per se, but having healthcare REITs is like, as long as healthcare will always be around, which it will, and if
Yep.
technology continues to progress, which historically speaking it always has, then those REITs that have the healthcare, it's the same thing. You're basically investing in the success that people will continue to get older, and that's one. I'm not a betting man, but I can 100% bet that people will continue to get older.
Yeah, right. No, that's a great segue actually into 2 sectors of healthcare and technology, and the difference obviously, there's a huge difference between healthcare in Canada and the US. Obviously, Canada has universal healthcare. Obviously, in the US, it's much more insurance-based. You have more opportunity to invest in probably some insurance companies or other ways of investing into that healthcare. Like I said, my primary play in healthcare is through the REITs, but then also, combining that with technology, like you mentioned, we've just seen it in these last 3 years. I don't know if you heard, but these last 3 years there was this little thing called a pandemic or something. I don't know. There was something that happened.
Never heard of it. Never heard of
Yeah, right.
it.
But obviously, all of a sudden there's things like, you don't go to the doctor's office, you have it like this, you have a video call with your doctor.
Hmm.
So the technology and the healthcare are merging. I get your point 110%, and I agree with you. I've tried to limit my sports betting, but I will bet with you 110% that people will continue to get older every single day and not get younger, right? So
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think the pandemic has expedited technology in healthcare. Maybe for better or for worse, but I think that it's only an ever growing space with the technology in healthcare. We've seen technology overtake a lot of things in
yeah.
just in the last like couple of years. It seems like, and I think healthcare is obviously a lot more. I'm speaking in the U.S. here. I'm sure it's the same in Canada, but it's very regulated in the healthcare sector, obviously for good reasons.
Yeah.
And so I think tech with healthcare is a little bit. It takes a little bit more time for tech to get its foot in the door in healthcare because of the regulations again, which is a good thing. But I think it's only an ever growing space that is something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, great point. Great point. I don't know anything more in healthcare or tech. Well, we can circle back around to technology, but anything more in healthcare that you want to discuss, or any companies within the healthcare sector, or uh, any thoughts on this Johnson and Johnson kind of splitting? You know how Johnson and Johnson is kind of the consumer side and the pharma side, and now they're splitting into more than one company.
Yeah.
First, do you hold any Johnson and Johnson, and what are you thinking of this? Whatever they're calling it, a split.
Yeah,
I don't even know
a
what they're
spin off or
a
something.
spinoff, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love to revisit the tech as well because I have my thoughts on tech separately of tech and healthcare combined.
Yep,
But yeah, I do own some Johnson and Johnson, and I think the spinoff is good. I think Johnson and Johnson has gotten very massive as companies just will progress and they get bigger and bigger. And I think it'll be good. I personally think as an investor, it'll be good to separate. Hey, we have our more pharmaceutical, more this based stuff, and we have our more consumer based things that they're doing. And
yeah,
I think the spinoff is good long term. I think short term it could cause some like, well, why are they really doing that? Is Johnson Johnson, what's happening? And but I think long term it'll be a good thing for this spinoff. But as we all know in investing, only time will tell if it really is. But outside of Johnson Johnson, I don't own any like Moderna. I don't own any Pfizer or anything like that. I don't own any of Johnson Johnson. My only healthcare stock, which is now going to be spinning off into like a healthcare and then more of like a consumer staples type thing. But yeah,
yeah.
that's the only one I have.
Okay, yeah, interesting, fair point. And, again, just before we circle back around to technology, because I do wanna get back there as well, but speaking of that Johnson& and Johnson consumer staple side, and obviously, you think of things like, Band-Aids, baby shampoo, baby oil, and tons of other, things, we could probably all go through our house and find something that either says Johnson and Johnson or Procter and Gamble or Unilever on it. Let's just touch on that consumer staples uh, sector. We kind of are consumer discretionary as well. I like to kind of lump into the same segment because Coca-Cola and Pepsi, I feel are consumer discretionary, whereas
Mhm.
Walmart and Costco are more consumer staples. You do have to go grocery shopping at least once every 7 days, 10 days, whatever. So
Right.
you do have to go to a grocery store, whether it's Walmart or Costco. You don't have to buy Coke and Pepsi or all the Pepsi snacks when you're at that grocery store. So I kind of I do lump them together, but I do understand the separation. So I guess
Mhm.
before we circle back to that technology, let's talk about the sort of the consumer staples and discretionary. What are your thoughts in that sector?
Yeah, so I have quite a bit of consumer staples discretionary holdings. So I own like I put in my portfolio so I could name them all, so I wasn't wrong. So like Target, Pepsi, Lowe's, and Home Depot, like I mentioned, if we want to lump those in there.
Yep,
Costco, Procter and Gamble. I do own Coca-Cola, CVS, if you want to throw that in there as well.
yep, for sure.
Um, and Altria, which could maybe which is the cigarette company, which some might call that a staple in their lives. So could you throw that in there too? But so I own those companies, and I think that's I like those aren't the companies that are going to be like the next Tesla. They're not going to be the next Apple in terms of returns, at least from now looking forward. They've already had their massive growth stage. They're now more mature companies, but they're also, Costco is, again, you never say never in investing, but highly improbable that Costco fails tomorrow, right? And it will only
Right.
continue to grow. Costco, people will continue to, obviously there's a law of diminishing returns. Like, let's say they had everyone in the world was a member. Well, they can't grow their membership because then, more people have to be born. That's so there is that. But Costco is one of those companies where people love it. They go there. They are loyal to the brand, like a Starbucks, right? They are loyal to Starbucks. Starbucks, yes, they make coffee special, but it's $7, $8 or whatever, and it's like whether you like it or you're not, you go there over Dunkin' because you like Starbucks for because you're loyal. You have their points app or whatever, right? So Costco is one of those companies that I love, and I added to my portfolio. I don't remember I did a YouTube video on it. I want to say it was mid last year or beginning of last year, sometime when I added Costco to my portfolio. But Coca Cola, Pepsi, I'm a big fan of Pepsi. I like Pepsi a ton. And then the other ones I mentioned as well, Target. I don't own any Walmart, but some Target as well. But I'm very consumer staples, consumer discretionary, of course. Staples wise, specifically, they're called that for a reason because
Yeah.
whether the economy is good or whether the economy is bad, you got to go to you got to get food. You got to drink something, water. You got to maybe people like their soda, their Pepsi, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's always going to be there no matter what. Now they might shop at different places. You might choose Walmart over Costco in a bad market, or not buying in bulk as much, or because it's too expensive, you can't afford it, or whatever. Maybe inverse, you're buying in bulk because you get a better cheap per unit cost, whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, consumer staples in general will always be, they're called that consumer staples for a reason.
So shout out to Dividend Hero, who's going to be a guest later on this month. Costco, he loves Costco, loves his tweets about Costco. So shout out to Dividend Hero, and I'm looking forward to that conversation as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I agree with you. Those consumer staples, it doesn't matter, bull market, bear market, recession, whatever. You have to eat every day. We get
Hmm.
up, we have to eat at some point, whether you eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, you're eating 2, 3 meals a day, you're snacking, and yeah, so your stomach doesn't care about the market.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yeah, your stomach does not care if the rates are at highs, the rates are at lows. It wants its food. So
Yeah, exactly. Now you did mention earlier how you hated banks. Maybe your opinion of banks has changed since your teenage years, but do you know anything or much about the Canadian banks? And I'm guessing you probably do from being on the DivTwit community. Um,
yeah, I know the only bank I know off the top of my head is RBC. That's a bank, right? RBC,
yep,
British Royal
Royal Bank of
British
Canada.
Royal Bank of Canada. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the only one I'm familiar with.
Okay, so Yeah, basically, I'll just cover this quickly because all of my viewers and listeners know, but maybe some of your audience, when we tweet this out that might be
Yeah.
listening, yeah, they've all been paying dividends for well over 150 years, and the Bank of Nova Scotia, I believe, is the first one coming up on the 200-year anniversary
Wow.
in 29. So in 2029, it'll be a 200-year anniversary, and then I believe, yeah, don't quote me on this. I'll have to look it up, but I think Bank of Montreal is in 2031 on their 200-year anniversary. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That is some consistency for sure. That is definitely a history.
There's a tweet from, his account is at Settling Nomads, and I will DM that to you so you can see it's just impressive. So, obviously, they haven't increased their dividend every year for 200 years, but, somebody else on my Twitter feed or maybe here on the podcast mentioned to me, we should call it, how there's dividend kings, dividend aristocrats. He's like, yeah, they're called dividend centurions. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah. Multi centurions very soon.
Yeah, yeah. So just moving on from the banking sector and the financial sector, telecoms I find interesting. We have some, kind of the three big ones here in Canada, and sort of similar in the US. You have your AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile as your three big ones. I know there's some other smaller players as well, but any thoughts on the telecom sector?
Yeah, I don't own any outright in my individual portfolio. Now I own, like I mentioned earlier on this
ETFs,
podcast. Yeah, through ETFs I do. But I don't. I used to own AT&T, or T is the ticker symbol in the U.S. I used to own it, and then I had paid a good dividend, but there was no growth there, and a lot of my portfolio. I mean, 99% of my portfolio is. Actually, let me give you more clear. Like 97% of my portfolio is dividend growth focused stocks. And so, I didn't like T for that factor of that. So I don't own any outright. I did used to own AT&T, but since then had sold it off. And kind of glad I did because it hasn't done great. It pays a good dividend, but for this portfolio of more growth focus, dividend growth focused, I shied away from adding to more T and just cut it and moved on with some of their holdings.
Okay, awesome. So we've kind of covered a lot of the sectors: REITs, energy, banks, telecoms, like food being consumer staples and discretionary, healthcare. We got into technology a bit. We said we're going to circle back to technology, so let's do that now. Let's circle back to technology. And what else did you want to say?
No, it was just tech is a sector. Speaking of sectors, is a newer sector, right? There's always tech is a newer thing, newer being relative to the life of the stock market.
Right.
And the big names in the space is you look at Apple, you look at Tesla, you look at Amazon, Netflix, and these big companies, but a lot of them
Google.
don't. Yeah, Google, exactly. Facebook or Meta now. They don't pay dividends, or they pay very low dividends, like low yields.
Yep.
But I think for me, again, just like I mentioned, my portfolio is dividend growth focused. I see long term that with the dividend, hey, it's not great today. The yield is not great today, but over the course of 20 or 30 investing years for me or longer, that those yields will hopefully increase, and or the dividend amount will increase. And Apple, has increased their dividends. Microsoft as well. So hopefully, just over time, that will progress. But just in this as a sector, like just in general, like I mentioned with healthcare, like that intersection between tech and healthcare is going to be massive. And I just think tech has a very huge future, because tech is like a lot of things. Tech intertwines with a lot of different sectors. And
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Tesla, but Tesla doesn't pay dividends, so I won't talk on it too much here, because keep it on the dividend talk. But I just am a fan of tech, and I think that there's a lot of potential in the future of tech. It's tough, because it's like, well, which tech company is it going to be?
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of circle back to the ETF conversation of like, well, maybe a tech focused ETF that is maybe good for your portfolio. Where like I don't know what the next good tech, what's going to be the Coke and Pepsi of tech. Right now it's Apple and Microsoft, but is always going to be Apple, Microsoft, or in tech is such a broad term. There's so many different sectors within tech, but and definitely I'm a fan of tech. Me being younger with that portfolio, I'm like, hey, tech I think has a large growth potential. And then you throw on that dividend growth with Apple and Microsoft, some other names. I think it could be a pretty interesting portfolio for me, at least, in the next coming decades.
Here's my thing with Apple. I'm sure you're old enough to remember Blackberries. 15 years ago, everybody had a Blackberry. Blackberry was actually still is a Canadian company, and Blackberry was like everybody had that was like the first smartphone. Everybody had a Blackberry. It was part of popular culture. Like in movies, they would say, "Oh, I need my Blackberry."
Hmm.
And right now I see this is where iPhones are. I don't know something's going to come along. I don't know what it is. I don't know when it's going to be, but something's going to come along that's going to displace iPhones. And so that's where I see now. Obviously, Apple is still huge without the iPhone. They have iPads and laptops and iMacs and iPads and iPods and the list goes on, right?
Yeah.
But I do see a displacement coming. I don't know when, I don't know by who, I don't know what it's gonna be, but I'm just looking at history repeating itself going, "Hey, this happened to BlackBerry. They were the first and hugest smartphone out there, and now, 15 years ago, everyone had a BlackBerry. Today, nobody has a BlackBerry, right?" So,
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
be
And
wrong. I don't know.
yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a fair point, and a fair thing to talk about with Apple, and Apple specifically as they are in that space, and I think that's where Apple, and you mentioned it there, is different than BlackBerry. Different in the sense of BlackBerry, to my knowledge, was like just the phone, right? And maybe they had maybe one or two other things, but it's pretty much just the phone, right? Like that's
Yeah,
what made. I think with Apple, they have the phones, and the iPhones are a large part of their business, and we know that, but they also have, like you mentioned, all these other things that maybe if you took away the iPhone, Apple would not be the Apple they are, like in terms of a business numbers. But they have other parts of the ecosystem that prop up the iPhone. Like, you have iPhone, right? Or do you have iPhone? No. Okay, so
Samsung.
okay, Samsung, right? So maybe heard this from your friends, or you've seen people say like, oh, you have the green text, I want the blue text, right? Like Apple has created this type of ecosystem, right? And like for me, I'm an Apple user on my phone, but also my laptop is a Mac, right? So I can do things and easily AirDrop between my phones and my laptop. I can text between and all that stuff. So the ecosystem that's been built on Apple is it's not a reason that Apple will always be successful, but I think that strengthens something in their business a little bit, maybe a marginal amount, but it does
Yeah.
do some sort of strengthening of it.
Now, you did mention too how technology sort of has crept into pretty much every other sector, and I kind of want to bring up heavy industrials, companies like John Deere, companies like Caterpillar, and I I I don't know if you know him or not on Twitter. He's Barry Milligan. He was on the podcast about 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Great conversation. Uh, Gentleman about my age, maybe a slightly older, easygoing, laid back, and we were talking, and he was like, "You know what? I would put John Deere and Caterpillar into the technology sector nowadays because you get into the cab of a brand new tractor, it's like you're in a spaceship, right?" So
Right.
I guess kind of back to your point of technology converging in these other sectors as well. So I guess any thoughts on the heavy industrials like the two companies I mentioned or any others,
Y-
and that thought of technology kind of coming in, embracing all these other sectors or
Yeah. So I do own some Caterpillar myself. It's about 3% of my individual portfolio, so a smaller amount, but I do own a little bit there. And yeah, like you mentioned with tech, yeah, tech is in almost every sector. I mean, and maybe there's a few that is still like people are still holding off tech, but it seems like tech always eventually finds a way in,
right.
and that's where you see that intersection of and why tech as a again tech is a very massive sector. There's a lot of subsectors within tech for different things, but why tech has been one of the massive growers in the last 23 years basically is because of what it has been able to do, which is seep into tractors, or heavy industrials to the aerospace, the airplanes, Boeing. Like you look at it inside of an airplane 20 years ago or 30 years ago to now, it's like, who is like people now don't even know how to use the old airplanes because there's the electronics are way different. And with cars, like in everything. So tech has found its way into almost every sector, to my knowledge, if not
for
every
sure.
sector. And has had, but in a good way, it's made life a lot easier. Sometimes headache, tech with like doing streams and computers, and there's always headaches. It seems like, but it definitely has made life easier, like to be able to do what we're doing right now. Right, this has, in a way, tech has seeped into the podcasting, and podcasting in general has been able to flourish because of tech. So yeah, tech seems to be that one sector that seeps into every other sector and makes it hopefully better. Makes that sector in and of itself better.
Yeah, good point. And as you were talking there, I was thinking about even like the interior of a transport, like a tractor trailer transport truck. And yeah, 20, 30 years ago, they're very basic. The majority of them were standard, and only the old guys could drive them. And
Mm-hmm.
nowadays is like they're automatic. Yeah, it's pretty
The
much the exact same comparison you just made to the cockpit of an airplane.
Yeah, the even like with the my uncle's a truck driver, and like the logs, with I'm
Oh,
sure in Canada there's there's legalities between how long you can drive, and it used
yep.
to be on paper, and they could cook the books a little bit and say, well, I didn't
Yeah,
really drive,
a little bit, a lot.
okay, a lot, and now like you can. I'm not going to say too much, but I've heard that even with the electronics, you can still find a way, but it's way harder to
Yeah.
cook the books on your driving. So tech, obviously it's good thing like it's making it safer for drivers, but there is like some people aren't as happy with tech coming into certain aspects of maybe what they've done before.
So in Ontario, the equivalent to DOT is called MTO, Ministry of Transportation, and yeah, so it's kind of like this old joke of like an MTO or DOT officer pulling a truck driver over, saying like, "How did you go 600 miles in the last hour and a half?"
Yeah.
Magic, right? Like,
Yep. Yep. You just, oh, I didn't start driving until this time, and
yeah.
then, yeah.
So yeah, you definitely the truck drivers cannot get away with that anymore. Where they could, like you said, let's do some creative logbook keeping in the past days. Because yeah,
Yeah.
it's now law here to have the electronic logbook in trucks.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yep.
um,
Yep. It's law in the U.S. as well, but there are. I'm not going to say the ways, but I've heard there's still ways to kind of tweak the system slightly. But it's, like I said, way harder than
yeah, interesting. I
the
haven't heard that,
logbooks.
and I actually work in purchasing and logistics, so I deal with like carrier trucking companies on a daily basis, and
Well, I'll
it,
shoot you a DM and explain it. I don't want to, I don't want the
yeah,
DOT or the
don't
MTO
expose
to come.
anybody.
Yeah, I don't want the truck drivers to be mad at me. Uh, but no, that's cool. That's cool.
Awesome. Let's get into talking about some of your socials because, like I said earlier, you have all the Twitter followers. I
Yes.
do have your link tree here up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. But you can see this, and yeah, I just want to kind of go through some of the
Mhm.
different things that you have going on here in your link tree.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, I'm building a software that tracks dividends, and it'll be available for global. Not every exchange. We don't have like the Jamaican Stock Exchange, which I wish we did, but we don't have that one just yet. And so that's the first Discord for it. And then I also have like a paid Discord where I talk about like just different, like I do options. I sell options, which is another way of creating kind of like a dividend on steroid with more risk there.
Yeah,
And then so I have like a course on growing a dividend kingdom. And then a lot of my stuff down at the bottom is affiliates for different, and this is all, sorry for all the Canadian watchers or international watchers, but it is all US based, with M1 Finance, and Personal Capital, where you can track your net worth. And then all my socials down at the bottom. But basically, all my links on the link tree go to some sort of resource, whether it's paid or free. It goes to a resource to help you, the viewer, to learn something. My goal with all my
yeah,
socials is to have someone walk away from my page being like, okay, I learned one thing. Whether it's like, oh, what is a stock ticker, or it's like something very high level. You're not a beginner in investing. It's just I want people to walk away feeling like they learned something from my page, and so a bunch of resources that, depending on what you're looking for, can help you find, hopefully find value from my page.
cool. I will have the link in the description below for that link tree where you can find all of Colin's like socials, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and yeah, I do want to just pull up your YouTube as well. Give me 2 seconds to find that.
Yeah, and
And
while you're doing that, I can kind of explain on YouTube. So I actually live stream every single morning on YouTube, um, right at Stock Market Open, US Stock Market Open, 9:25 a.m. Eastern Time, 8:25 a.m. Central Time. I stream every single morning for about an hour live. So you come in there, there's like 70 to 80 people that come in consistently at
cool.
the time. And yeah, we just chat. It's almost like this. We just have conversations and,
Yeah,
Dave, maybe I'll have you on if you're free in the mornings. If you have time, have you on maybe just for 10 or 20 minutes to share
I'd
your
love
thoughts.
to, but my work probably wouldn't appreciate
Oh,
me
okay.
saying,
Well,
"Hey, you know what? It's 9:30. Markets are about to open. I need to go."
well, if you ever take a day off and you're like,
Actually,
hey, I don't,
there are days that obviously there's Canadian holidays that are different than U.S. holidays, so we could probably figure that out at some point. Yeah,
yeah, cool. Let's do that. And yeah, with those live streams, I still post content, like I post videos, but my focus is on the live streams and helping people live, like answer questions. I love YouTube and YouTube is great. I love Twitter. Twitter is great, but whenever you reply to something, sometimes I'm a talker and it's hard for me to reply with 280 characters on Twitter. And, I run out of space. So doing it live gets like the interaction of like the question, and then I can answer it right then. So that's what I love to do on YouTube is the live stream videos as well.
awesome. Yeah, no, I I agree with that 100%. It's great fun doing live streams when you get a whole bunch of people in the chat, and it's just great back and forth. I actually just did a live stream on Sunday afternoon. I'm trying to do about
I saw it.
one
I
per
watched
month.
it. Yeah,
Oh, were
I
you
saw it.
there?
I watched for a little bit. I watched for a little bit. Have had some conversations with Haley before, so she had mentioned that she was going to be on there. So I watched it for a little bit.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that was fun. That was great to have the international perspective of Haley from the UK, Justine in the US, and then obviously John and I here in Canada. And also having two female voices because it's, in the nearly, well, over 4 months of doing this podcast, I've only had three or four female guests, and it's just like I want more female voices. I want more women to speak up and be guests and get that female perspective. So it was amazing to have two on the same show.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say like in with my YouTube analytics, if I look at my analytics, like 89 or 90% of my subscribers are male. Which, obviously investing in money is a male dominated conversation
Yeah.
and thing, but it doesn't have to be. And that's why I love seeing, creators and people talking about investing in money related topics that are women, because it's like that, actually statistically speaking, women are better investors too. Like they're
Right.
like statistically they are better investors. So it's cool to see more and more women doing and creating content about investing and empowering other women to get into it, because this, as much as Dave and myself, we love to talk about investing, our voices only go so far. So when we have other people on our side doing podcasts, sharing content, both men and women, but women especially, which is an under like focus group, but women are getting more and more into it, the voices will get stronger and stronger. So it's good to see. And I was happy to see that. Yeah, it was impressive to see 50-50. Usually it's like maybe one female on the panel or none, so it was
Yeah.
cool to see two.
Awesome. Yeah. No, I appreciate that you were there. That's awesome. And then yeah, now I'm just showing or Twitter. You can easily find you at Decade Investor on Twitter. Like I said, 123,000 followers. How did you get 123,000 followers on Twitter?
Showing up every single day for about 2.5 years, creating content, posting, and sharing my journey as really what it's been. I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's just been showing up every day and with the mindset of how can I help someone, like provide
Yeah.
value on their feed, and it's just been 2.5 years of doing that every day. I can count on that one hand how many times I didn't tweet like in a day. And that was one time because I had the flu. So I was like, couldn't even get out of bed. And the other time, Twitter didn't like me. So they like shadow banned my account. So I didn't tweet for a day to kind of get it rid of. But outside of that, for, 2.5 years, I showed up pretty much every single day. trying to provide value to someone's life. And then it was just, that's what I did.
Awesome. That's a great story, and that's kind of exactly what, I'm trying to do with this podcast as well is, if we can reach one person, 5 people, 10 people to help them to, every one of these guests I've had on now in just over 4 months, well over 40 guests. By the end of February, is gonna be well over 50 guests, and, everybody brings a different story, a different perspective, a different idea, a different strategy. So, we're just really trying to help people think, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that before. Oh, I haven't thought of that before." And I know even just this conversation we've had this last 50 some minutes now that we're getting into, we're closing in on an hour already. It's the time goes by so fast in these conversations.
Yeah.
But I already know that, like, hey, somebody out there is going to say, "Hey, I haven't thought of that before," or that strategy or this strategy or whatever. And that's exactly what so many what people have already told me. This is like, "Oh, I listened to this podcast and I hadn't thought of that before. Or I hadn't thought of that strategy or this or that," right? So
Hmm.
very similar mindset, similar idea that, just trying to help provide value, help people, and anything that we can do to help each other along the way is greatly appreciated by everyone. And that's a big thing about the dividend Twitter community too. It's so much helpful. Like people are just truly, genuinely trying to help each other, and you know,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, no, I mean, and you bring up a good point because, and this is why I tell people all the time, like in my streams, and I told them today, is at the end of the day, whether or not someone listens to this podcast, listens to your, your other podcasts you've done, your other guests, reads your tweets, watches, my stuff or whatever, whether or not that person decides to invest their money or like, I want to get on this journey, at the end of the day, like I'm going to be on my journey.
yeah,
Dave, you've been investing. You will continue to invest, whether or not like your podcast gets 0 listens or 5 million listens. Right? You're still gonna. You're just sharing content over what you're doing, and I find that's really honorable for a lot of people because I'm here to like we're here to help you. There's nothing like we're just sharing our journey. We're just sharing our thoughts on what we're already doing. I don't have to
yeah,
go out of my way to think of content because my content is my life because I'm investing. I'm buying every single week. I'm doing what I say. And it truly comes from, and I can tell, with you, Dave, as well, like it comes from the bottom of our hearts. We just want to help people realize the power behind these things, the power behind smart financial decisions, the power behind making these decisions, because it's changed my life. It's like, wow, when you can sit there and watch your money work for you when you're not doing anything, or you can get paid a dividend every month or every quarter or yearly, whatever it may be, for you to do nothing. Like that
yeah,
it gives you a different perspective on life. And I just like want other people to see like the power behind this. I want other people to be like, wow, I can have that too. And that's why I share the content. That's why I'm sure you do this stuff too.
yeah.
You just want to help people to realize the power behind all these things.
Yeah, so not financial advice, obviously, but I agree 100% that we're just, sharing. And you just made a great point. I think it's actually my pinned tweet right now is like, I love it. I love it when companies pay me to not work for them. It's like,
Yep.
I literally get paid by all these great companies and I don't do anything. I go to bed at night. I wake up in the morning and I see a notification on my phone that there's 20 bucks, 50 bucks, whatever, maybe only $5. I don't know. Right. And I
Hmm.
know everybody, it could be $1, it could be $100, and whatever it is, that's great because $1 is a lot better than $0, right?
Yeah, it's $1 in passive income from dividends is better than $1 in active income, because at the end of the day, you did nothing to earn the $1 in passive when you had to do something to earn the $1 in active.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, everyone. This is the thing about investing that gets a lot of people like hesitant or whatever is, you can see us on camera, right? I'm younger than Dave. Dave, you seem, you look young. I'm not saying you look old. You look young. You might what, 35?
Holy shit, I like you a lot better now. I'll DM you and tell you how old I am.
Yeah, but we're all on our different journeys, right? And we're, I've been in, I haven't been investing as long as someone who's probably 60 that started at 20, right? It's just, but at the end of the day, like you being the listener, doesn't take you investing doesn't take away from me investing. Like this is the thing about investing, that we can all make it, or we can all find success in investing. It's not like, oh, if Dave buys Apple stock, then I can't buy Apple stock because then like I'm taking away from Dave. No, it's like we are then in it together because we both want Apple stock to go up. Like we both
Yeah.
want Apple stock to pay us the dividend. We both want to see success with Apple. So it's like community joining together, like when you're investing in things. And that's why I like investing too, because there's not like me versus you. It's us with us. You know, it's like
Yeah,
us,
and
me
I've
and
made
you.
this point also, like, this is kind of a random point because we're just 2 white guys sitting here talking, but I've made this point on other podcasts where I've had, visible minorities, and I've said, "Listen, the stock market doesn't care if you're white, black, Asian, straight, gay. The stock market doesn't care, male, female, the stock market doesn't care. The stock market is the most inclusive club that anyone can join. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter, you know, black,
Yep.
white, Asian, male, female, gay, straight, all the other however many subcategories there are these days, and it just doesn't matter. Doesn't matter as long as you have that $10, $25, $100 to invest into something. You can start making passive income. You can start with that dollar, and that's my other big. Well, I've stolen it from Moneyball. My Moneyball, and I call it my Moneyball reference. Just get on base. Just get
Hmm.
on base, right? You're not going to
Yep.
hit a grand slam. You don't need to hit a grand slam. You don't need to hit a home run. You don't even need to hit a ground rule double. Just get on base. Just get hit
Yeah.
by a pitch for
Yeah,
crying out
right.
loud.
Find a way. Find a way. That's you know, when I tell people, because I always get the question, how do I get started or whatever, like this or the other. It's just get started. So many people get analysis paralysis. They're like, all right, you know, I
Yeah.
see this investing thing. I've listened to this podcast. I want to buy something,
I've watched
whatever.
all these YouTube videos and I've went to YouTube University and
Right.
you are gonna learn a lot from listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos and, reading tweets, and you're gonna learn a lot, but I'm gonna let you finish your point because I know where you're going with the point.
Yeah, my point is I like to make the analogy of the gym, right? I like to work out, but I know that if I go to the gym today and I go do bench press or I go run or let's just do running, I go run. I know I'm not going to lose my weight today, right? I have to run the next day and the next day. I have to keep working out, and then
Yeah,
progressively over time, I will start to shed the pounds, right? Same thing with investing. It's not about going investing $100,000 one time and then you're set. It's hey, can I invest $5 this week? Can I invest $10 this week? And then the next week, the same thing,
pay
$5,
yourself
$10,
first
$50.
every
Right. Pay
paycheck.
yourself first. And it's like I call it the investing gym, right? Or I forget what analogy I use. I always change it up sometimes, but it's like the investing gym, right? You're lifting weights, but the weights are your deposits into your account. And over time, you do it consistently, then your muscles, aka your investment account, gets bigger and bigger. And this is the point where you see those big guys in the gym where it's like they don't even really do anything. They're already like swole and you're like, they're big. You're like, how is that possible? It's like, well, because they spend a lot of time doing it. Same with the big investment accounts. It's like, well, how is this person getting this dividend amount? It's like, well, because they spent the last 20 years, the last 10 years, the last 30 years going to the investing
The
gym.
dividend gym and
Yeah, or
and
the
putting in
dividend
that
gym.
$5 or $10 or $100 out of
Exactly.
every single paycheck. Pay yourself first.
Yep, pay yourself first, and especially when you're just starting out, like a lot of people, like with the analysis paralysis, they see all these videos like, well, do I buy O or do I buy Stag? Do I buy Pepsi or do I Coke? It's like just get something in there because truth be told, investing $5 a week into Pepsi or investing $5 a week into Coke isn't going to change your life. Like just $5 a week, but just get your money in there, and it'll change your life because then you will learn that hey,
Yeah. But
I'm used to
after
this
20
money going
years
up.
investing $5 a week into one or the other, Coke or Pepsi, that is gonna change your life.
Right, it will. Right, let me qualify that point. My point was it's not going to change your life like crazy amounts where it's like Pepsi and Coke and like where I was going with that was
I
is
yeah,
just
I got what your
get in
point
there.
was.
Yeah, like just get in there, just get invested. Focus less about what it is. Obviously, there's importance to that, but
Yeah,
understand
do
what you're
your own
investing into.
research and do your
Yeah,
due
but
diligence.
just get in the gym. Just get in the gym, and whether you're doing curls or push-ups, you're still going to be working out the same similar muscle. That's probably a bad example. Whether you're doing bench press or push-ups, you're going to work the same muscle group. It's just a different activity. It's a different
Right.
Coke or Pepsi, but you're still going to grow your money over the long run. So just get, like you said, I love that. Just get on base. Just get on base.
Just get on base.
I love it.
Wow, I see we're already very close to an hour. Right off the top, you were talking about remembering remembering when you had to pay $3 and $5 and $7 for trades. Some homework for you. I hope you can go back and listen to the passive income podcast with Master P because him and I were talking about the struggle of investing in the 90s before there were things like apps on your phone and the internet was still new. And so you will be very probably shocked at some of the um, commission prices and some of the things that we went through back in the day to to actually be able to make trades. So yeah, if you get a chance to listen to that one,
I'll check it
definitely do.
out.
You'll find it's probably somewhat entertaining, and he was a great guest as well. So
Yeah, I'll check it out. I was born in 1998, so I mean, I was born in the 90s, but obviously I was 1 or 2 years old, so did not do much investing in those early years.
awesome. With that said, I do want to thank you so much for being a guest on this another incredible conversation on the Passive Income Podcast. Anything you would like to say before we sign off?
No, I just thank you for having me, and I'm gonna steal your analogy while giving you credit when I use it. Is just get on base. I think that's a perfect way of saying it. If there's any value you can get from this podcast is while we talked about all these different sectors and these different holdings that we'd like, your money will never grow for you if you never invest it. I tweeted today, compound or $0 compounded over 30 years is still $0. So you have to like get on base. So I love that
Just get on
analogy.
base.
Just get on base. I love it. I love
We didn't even talk about turn that cash register around. Another one that people have given me credit for,
it.
even though somebody else said it first, but they're like, "Oh, I heard it from you, so I'm giving you credit for it."
Yeah. Well, I'll come back in the future, or if you come onto my live stream, we'll use that analogy too.
Awesome, awesome. So again, thank you so much for spending an hour of your time with me. And yeah, if you're still watching this late in the episode, you do have to subscribe. Those are the rules. Just go down to that subscribe button and just click it. You won't be disappointed. Like I said, I have so many guests all the time, 10 or 12 every month. So always great conversations here on the Passive Income Podcast. Thank you so much to Colin at Decade Investor. Find him on Twitter. And we'll see you in the next one. Subscribe.